So now we're going to talk about shooting for effects. Stark's going to go through a few things, and then we're going to cut to green screening. But that's the basic idea behind creating atmosphere, different things like that that you can do, like the fog, cigarettes, rain, anything that you can kind of fill your scene with to up your production value. But Stark, why don't you talk a little bit about VFX?
Okay, this is more like a checklist of things to have when you're doing it. A lot of it's common sense stuff, but a lot of it's overlooked too. So I'm just gonna go down the list. So you want a printed list of shots, especially if you're like working with people or even for yourself, so you could stay organized. So even like, yeah, you're gonna have your shot list, but you want an effect shot list, so you could just go down the list. And that's kind of like what we did with Adobe and the Frog, or anything pretty much. It's like, we have 10 shots, check it off. And then a camera report for shots. If you don't know what a camera report is, a camera report is, so yeah, a camera report. This is, in bigger stuff, it's a really big deal, especially if you're working with like CG stuff. You want to mimic the camera, so you want to write down every single thing about that camera. You want to write the size of the sensor, the type of lens you're shooting with, the ISO settings, the f-stop, everything. And you want it for every single shot, because especially if you want to mimic real life, that's exactly how it is. Like tomorrow I'm going to show you guys a shot, a composite shot thing, but it was the same thing as he did this zoom in shot thing, and I'm like, give me all of your settings. Because even the lighting, it's the same thing. So it's not like this magical world in CG anymore. Everything's based off of like real life. Okay, tape measure, that's important. And it seems obvious, but especially if you're working with like a modeler or someone, you want to know, oh, make this thing 10 feet tall. Okay, where do I put it in the scene? I don't know. In fact, could you bring the camera out?
Josh?
Well, just bring it.
You want to grab it? Yeah. Josh, can you bring it?
It's on both sides, right?
I have my coffee. I can't carry that.
Is that enough for you?
Yeah, no, that's fine. So I don't know if you guys see this little mark right here, if you ever wonder what it is. That's the exact place of where the sensor is, okay? So a lot of times if you're measuring stuff out, like I know your first thing is probably gonna be like, oh, measure from the camera, but you wanna measure from right here, because although light's coming in here, this is where the information's being recorded at. That's what this mark is. On lots of high-end cameras, you're gonna see it. And this especially comes into play if you're working with like a match move artist, someone that's gonna track stuff. They need this guy. They wanna know exactly where it is in the scene. I've worked on stuff where I just had to mimic still shots, and all I did is I just, okay, measured what's the distance to the actual object, the distance to the lights, recorded the lights, the light size, recorded how high it was on the table that it was on, just anything. Like even if you're like, okay, the main thing's gonna be happening 10 feet from the camera. Well, if you're just looking at the footage, you don't know what 10 feet is. So at least you could say, okay, this is about like the 10-foot mark, and then you can tell the CG person, and then they're like, all right, this looks about right once they bring it in. So it's just important to have a tape measure just for anything. Even if they're doing a set extension, you're like, okay, this needs to be, we want to cut off the top and then make it 20 feet higher. You just want a tape measure. So I can think of a million things. It's just good to have on hand. Okay, so trackers for camera track. Could you hand me the tape? Because we're going to do this in a second. Give me the black tape. Yeah. So if you're doing camera tracking, this is just a really quick method. Trackers like, I don't know if you guys use Mocha. That doesn't really apply to this situation, but say we're just tracking, let's put an obvious space. Like, okay, we just want to track this. An X or a triangle is a good option, or they say LED. I've never done an LED, but you could use little LED lights. They don't really cast that much light out. But with camera trackers, they love these sharp edges of contrast. So that's why it's really good to have triangle. You'll even see them sometimes. You'll see, it'll be like a circle with squares in it and then triangles. They love these little sharp edges. And it's not just like you wouldn't take this and then put it onto the sandbag because it's not gonna be able to see it. The point is that it needs like a very good point of contrast to track. So that's another thing. A notebook for whatever the hell. I mean, honestly, like, for whatever. That one's just, it's just good to record anything. And then shoot smart, which kind of goes back to yesterday when I was telling you guys about, like, oh, the boom mic's in there. Don't do that. Don't do stuff like that. Just keep track of everything. Don't assume that something's going to be easy. Don't let someone else assume that it's going to be easy. Just shoot smart. And then, again, be mindful of your time and budget, which goes with that. Don't let someone tell you, like, do this, it's totally fine, and it's not going to be fine. It's going to cost you time and money. So that's another thing. So even going back to the printed list of shots, just go down the list. Be smart with it. Now, okay, this is going to be something that I'm going to reference tomorrow, so make a mental note of it. This is just for, the first one is if you are keeping track of the shots, you want the sequence, which would be like the name of it. So magical pony scene. Okay.
Sounds like something we would make.
The shot number, so say we have 5 magical pony scenes, okay? This is gonna be shot number 1 of the actual like effect shots, and then the take. So keep that in mind because this is just to keep organized for the actual recording of it. The next one is different and I'll explain in a minute. A good thing to do is like see how I have 1010, 1020, 1030. The reason for that, I actually got this idea from my one friend, and it's skipping every one so that if you have to fill in another shot, you could just do, let's say, 1005. So then that way you could fill in, or even 1001. So it's just a good way to like do in-between stuff. Now, I'm gonna go over the second one tomorrow again, but just to give you a heads up, the same two are the same, the sequence and shot number, and then the type would be, is it a modeler, compositing, effects, whoever it's going to. So that would be the shot type, and then the name of the person, which is obvious, and then the version. And usually you want to do, it's smart to do like version 001, unless, I mean, I doubt you're going to go into the hundreds, but that's just something to keep in mind. But definitely, definitely, definitely keep track of those. And the reason it doesn't have a take in the second one is because by the time you give the artist it, you should already have chosen it. They shouldn't be worrying about what take it is. The take, that's just for the actual, when you're shooting it. And then I just have examples, like SOS, yeah, 1001, 25, and then I put my name in. But yeah, and then the file type. Oh, I didn't add the type, and then it would be dot whatever file it is. So that's just an example. And that's what I already told you. By the time it's handed over, you should already, they don't have to worry about the take.
So how many of you do VFX? I know you do. Who else does VFX? But do you do it as in that's what you want to do, or you do it because you have to? Because I do it because I have to, right? You do it because you love it. So most of us aren't VFX artists, nor do we want to be VFX artists, but this stuff is still insanely important, which is why I'm having Stark talk to you guys about it, even though this isn't a VFX class, because eventually you're going to work with VFX artists. Because it's not just Spider-Man that has VFX in it. Even the most indie of films have shots in it that are VFX that you never even realized they were. Day for Night, replacing car headlights. I don't know, what else could you think of? Just simple things.
This movie that has yet to come out, I'm spoiling, it's called North of Hell. They literally were like, we have, I don't know what the scene was, but there's people in the background. They're like, we need cops running up with flashlights. So we had these guys, and I had to add just flashlights. And that's always like, it's subtle. You're not like, oh, I'm blown away by it, but it's still, they needed it. Yeah, and it just needed a lens flare.
Very simple things. Even my film proximity, because oftentimes I don't really want in-your-face VFX when I'm doing something that's more serious and I want you to dive into, especially when you're on a low budget, quick turnaround scale. The higher you get, the more likely it's not going to be great because of either deadline or money, like that little thing that Stark was showing us yesterday. But proximity has like 52 VFX in it, but really you can only think about maybe 3 that you know of. But there's a ton of others that are living in there that you don't know exist. So it's really important as filmmakers with how films are done now for you to know how this stuff works and know how VFX artists work so you can treat them correctly, accordingly, and work in tandem with them in a way that makes sense to them and that won't kill your deadline. So even though you personally won't use this, it's really important for you to know how it works so you can direct them later on. Because that's a bit of everything for a director, is you need to know what everyone's doing so you can direct it. If you have no idea what a VFX artist is doing, you're just like, hey, do a thing, and I'll be over here. You can't really direct that.
And just in case nobody knows the difference, like you'll see special effects and visual effects, okay? Special effects is like what they used to, like the old school. I mean, they still do it.
Anything
like
in camera.
Anything in camera would be special effects. Anything on a computer is visual effects. So don't think like even if it's as simple as green screen, it would be visual effects. Don't think it has to be like ILM. Question?
So apparently the Academy of Motion Picture Arts and Sciences haven't figured that out yet. So I just wanted to add that.
That's just a comment, a burn. It's so true. It's very true. But let's jump into the green screening bit. Josh, let's get the camera over here. Let's move these tungsten lights out of the way. But that's the basic idea of just not really something, again, that you guys need to know about the shot tracking as far as you using it for yourself, but just understanding how visual effects artists work so you can better run your crew.